I know you got something to tell me. I know you do.
If you had asked me this question, I would say even 5 years ago, I probably would have pretty much said what the group has been saying. Nothing wrong with what they've been saying so far. But as we're pulling back the covers on this thing, the critical race theory, and looking at the actual laws and pieces of legislation that have been passed that have destroyed our communities intentionally, says who is responsible for how you and your community have been impacted. They tore my community down, trying to separate this middle class, well, I was from what you used to call crosstown, this middle class community, and put a highway through it. And now we know the Department of Transportation, that was their edict. That was their marching orders. So we have to realize, because we don't see it and we don't know it, they'll be doing exactly the same thing again. They made, people talk about segregation, they began to make the roads so that the bus could not drive under the bridge. They lowered the bridge so that we could not integrate these schools properly. So we have to look at, I hate to say this, well, what the devil will do, given an opportunity. So those of us who are in the government, let's all be truthful about what it is that's going on and be able to see these laws so that laws like that and are not passed again, as they have all of this great money to build infrastructure. We just have to keep our eye on how this money is being spent so it doesn't continue to foster institutionalized racism.
And though we are modeling what we want to see as we're doing these listening tours, a lot of times we'll have a little bit more time on those tours than we do today. So forgive me, anybody, if I end up missing you, but we're going to try to come on through it because we got some people that do have to get on a train and a plane tonight.
So the question is, how has racism in public education impacted you personally? I am a biological mother of 6, but together with others in this room, I am a mother figure to over 20,000 students in Jackson, Mississippi. How has racism in public education impacted you personally? Our state legislators in the state of Mississippi decided that the largest urban, that's the word they use when they want to call us black on the slot, urban school district in the state of Mississippi did not deserve to handle its own money, to pick its own teachers, its own superintendents. And so in 2016, our state legislators put into place mechanisms to have our school district taken over. First, they decided to put a law in place that that mandated that if your school district was underperforming, that they could have a legislative audit put into place. Prior to that, the State Board of Education was the only place that could do that. Now our legislators have that ability. Not only that, but our legislators after that decided that a certain percentage of all school districts in the state of Mississippi would be underperforming. If you are an underperforming school district, there are already laws on the books that says that you are at risk of being taken over by the state. So how has racism in public education impacted me personally? Again, as a mother of 6 biologically and a mother figure to over 20,000, I have watched people who don't look like me, but are sitting in seats and don't believe that they have to respond to me, make decisions for me.
We've been seeing it over and over again in New Orleans, in Little Rock, and several other states and cities and states where they get legislation passed to say we can take over your entire school district, or we might be able to take over a school. And we're saying, wait a minute, where did this standard jump up to? How did you get these numbers? Where did this come from? But again, we're seeing it over and over again. Can we have one more?
Yeah,
or do we go?
Wrap it up over here. Okay, no, I'm sorry. One or two.
How has racism impacted me personally? Well, our school district is paid by performance. We are in a entitlement school with families that are struggling at many times 5 times like this will have been home. And so in the struggles that our kids are doing, and if I'm getting paid by performance, meaning what they get on the test, if they score low on the test, that affects how much money I make. And the test is difficult, and the children cannot relate to the things on the test. So that has an impact with them.
Yeah. And I just want to ask for everybody that I pass this mic around to, I haven't been wiping it off, so please use the hand sanitizers on your table after you finish using the mic.
Thank you. I just want to say, I was directly impacted, with racism as well. I worked as a parent, a teacher's assistant in school for 20 years, right? Um, and I had to advocate on the slick side for our children. You know, children that wanted to come to school in the mornings with me and in the afternoons. You know, people that really care for children really stay in them early in the morning and they'll come and stay late in the afternoons, right? Um, and I will help them do their homework. Uh, got written up by one of the decision makers that went to another decision maker, you know, and I was reprimanded. So they don't want our children to learn. I remember even working with this young boy who didn't want to, who didn't like reading, and we read this book by Ernest Gaines, The Lesson Before Dying, on our own, right? And I got reprimanded for that. So, you know, when you advocate for children and you're working for this school system, especially charter schools now, you know, because I remember when I was young, in a traditional school setting, you know, people praise you for reading, you know. I remember a teacher just simply teaching me lift very voice and singing, how we all unified collectively got in circular stances, and how we felt singing, lift every voice and sing. So this has to stop. We got to stomp on it.
Thank you. I was gonna mention, who's responsible for how you and your community have been impacted? Right now in like Virginia, the first thing that comes to mind would be my school board. I mean, some of cities are encouraging like book burning, and we have school board members attending an anti-collective bargaining, conference next week. So they could, pass those resolutions easily and help educators and parents and students move forward. But a lot of them are not doing that. So I would say school boards.
So this Baltimore. I was just gonna say something that I've learned recently. A lot of our cities, split like different ways politically. So to the question of like who is responsible for how you and your community have been impacted, something we've like learned about is like strong mayor systems versus like strong council systems, and kind of how the decisions are made, and kind of like you elect your council members, and your council members, if it's like a strong mayor system, basically everything runs through the mayor, and it's kind of harder to make decisions, kind of harder, at least in Baltimore City, you have like a strong mayor system, so it's kind of harder for the people, to get to the decision-making aspect of things. They got to go through city council members that might not be on the same page, or might not really be having like-minded goals, and then those city council people got to try to get to the mayor who's definitely not on any like-minded goals, versus like other places you might have like a strong council system. You can just, you don't like a city council member, get them out of there, elect the new ones. You can kind of shape the community a little bit more better. But in the city, with a strong mayor system, the people are kind of purposely, set very far off from the decision-making process, and very far off from the powers that be. You feel me? Real like power. You feel me? Being able to create real political change and stuff like that. So yeah, strong mayor system, strong council system, talking to your delegates, stuff like that, and then of course, all of this is for the slavery. Just to throw it on top.
Politics within the politics to try to keep the people from the power. So how has inequity in education impacted your community? How has inequity in education impacted your community? Let's get another hand. All right.
Living in Detroit, I'm a product of Detroit Public Schools, and having two girls in Detroit Public Schools. After our emergency management left and the illusion of a real elected school board, fast forward to the pandemic,
they expected our children to get online, and they gave them the ultimate, most cheapest devices. And they blamed parents for not having their children log on, but yet you give them inadequate devices. And then we had to almost raise hell just to get these tech centers in the building for parents to bring these cheap devices in to get fixed or replaced. And then they start blaming our children and parents for breaking these devices. And so even now, look, my daughter is still virtual because I don't feel her being in the building is safe. But if I didn't have a laptop at home, my baby would be in trouble.
Set you up to fail you. And then when you find yourself by their grade of failing, they blame you for it. But they're the ones who failed you in the first place.
I'm guilty. Stand up. I've killed more school board members, it's true. I have run teachers out of schools, it's true. I got terrible history. But thanks be to God that my children are standing up and the other children that we have in our organizations and all over the school system respect us because they know we are their mothers and fathers and we look out for them. But be that as it may, 176,000 children when I first started off after I had 4 children and got involved, down to 50,000 now. They ran. Maybe we were too tough. What do y'all think? Because we just didn't take no mess. And we still ain't taking no mess, and they know it. And so we got a bad reputation. But let me tell you this, the bad reputation has turned into some good things. Although they ran from us, I take the responsibility, and y'all know I got a law degree and all that good stuff. So I know a whole lot about what's happening with legal situations. But there are some times when you look back over your life like I do when I'm in meetings like this and I think, maybe I was too tough. I beat up police officers. I called principals' houses and told them they better run and get out of town, and they quit. And not the superintendent, but the head of the school board, Dr. Golightly, was an Uncle Tom crap fool. And at the meeting where he was really trying to be good to the white folks and bad to us, I was in the back of the room, and he told me, Mrs. Moore, you want the whole loaf of bread. You won't settle for a half a loaf. Before I knew it, I had my 2 children in the back room with me doing their homework because I took them to the meetings with me. I ran up to the front and grabbed a glass of water to throw in his face. He died 4 days later. So am I good or am I bad? I don't know. But the point is, I don't take no mess.
Mama Lord don't take no mess.
It's stupid to be a racist and hate somebody because of the color of their skin. And I bring it out all the time. It's stupid. Just because my complexion is different than yours, you gonna try to discriminate against me. That's the most ignorant thing I've ever seen in my life. And they think it's right. Well, they don't even think about things like that. Well, I'm sorry, I don't want to be like Detroit, like I am in Detroit. I want to be calm. Okay.
I've learned since my mother has become a Baltimore City public teacher that since the teachers are underpaid, that they don't care and do half their job, and that affects students and how they get their education and how, just everything pretty much. So,
Just to add to point, something you be talking about in meetings is that it's a lot of money that's been pushed into like cities and stuff with like COVID going on, so there's really no need for what point was highlighted, but like lack of pay. Schools and now not too far from where we at, they got different color students, don't have the same history. They hire more people. They hire people to specialize in post, COVID life, you feel me? So just the
Maybe they put the money into, they put the money that you get into athletic teams. They don't put the money into what we really actually need it for. So they put the money into like football teams and basketball teams, because that's how they get in their money, but we are not getting our education.
They wanna make $1 off of us, but they wanna put $1 into us.
Yeah, how is inequity in education impacting the community? A few things. In the year 2000, Black people were 53% of the city of Chicago. In 2021, we're 31%. Over 250,000 Black people have been pushed out of Chicago. The common denominator is the loss of schools and the loss of affordable housing. So education and housing have been weaponized in order to help push us out of, one of America's strongest political Black cities. And so that impacts us in regards to us, not being able to have as strong a voice in what happens in government, how resources come out of communities. As this has happened, we've seen things like a lack of summer jobs for young people. And in Chicago in particular, you have heard about young people doing smash and grabs. You've heard about carjackings that have gone up. And the question that we raised, and why I know this is connected to education, because at one point, all those young people was in 3rd grade. And what was their lived experience? Well, these are the children of school closings. These are the children of the over 120 schools, over 160 schools that have been closed in the city of Chicago, who was in 2nd grade, their school closed, they got pushed to another school in 5th grade, then that school closed, and blah, blah, blah. That's their story. And so now the question is, well, that's what you gave them, this is what they're giving back. And I'm by no means am I condoning it, but the real, so you ask how is it impacting my community? It has sapped the hope out of so many young people. And then as people in the community that are trying to organize, you putting out fires left and right that you didn't create. That you didn't create. And I know this because I coach youth football. And so those young people, I engage those young people every day. These are young people who, outside of us, have nobody. Some of them do, but a lot of them don't. And so when you say how it's impacted our community, it has destabilized our community to the point where it's almost like you're on a boat and the boat is going to sink. The question is just when. You're bailing out water with so many holes in the boat, you don't know which one to plug first.
So you close our schools down, and then you force us, Black and brown people, out of town. You close our stores down, and you force us, Black and brown people, out of town. You close our businesses down. You push us up out of town.
I appreciate this opportunity. And for me personally, I believe that racism has impacted me on a level where so many things I didn't know that was going on and happening to other Black and brown people. Because if things are going well where you are, I just assumed that things were going well everywhere else, especially coming from New York City. I just thought Black people, okay, we all in, what I'm learning, you learning. What's going on in your community, is happening into my community. It wasn't until I moved to North Carolina that I was like, oh my God, what happened here? Like, back in time. I felt like I went back in time, just back in time. And then I realized what I did not know. And all of my personal assumptions about what was happening with Black people based on what was happening for me. I was always a fighter and always fighting for something. I knew we always had to fight for something. But now being planted
in the South, it just, the disparities and the segregation, is just so blatant when I go. I'm an elected school board member now. So I definitely, have these opportunities, right, as a leader and a decision maker to understand all the inequities, going in one Black school and seeing what they have, and then I go into another neighborhood, all white neighborhood, and see what they have, and it's like night and day. So that is a real wake-up call even for me. And it just makes me want to fight even more. And the more I fight, of course, I got white folk on my trail, trying to, of course, scare you and all this kind of foolishness, but they don't know. But that's what racism has done. Divided communities, divided our level of understanding, divided our need to care about one another, has, made us to just live in almost a glass house, about, oh, I got mine, and I see racism as the fact that, even people, again, I got my car, I got my house, my kids are good, you better go get yours. That is a real mentality. Racism, for me, has caused, living in a place where I don't even really know my neighbor. And people are okay with that. And I was like, I can't live like this where I don't know the person next door to me because stuff go on. And that just the basic caring ability. That's what racism has done in the community. Yes. That we don't care about one another. Come on, girl, preach. I got mine and I'm good. And that's what racism did to me because I'm a mother of 6 children. And I had to navigate New York City public school system and get what I needed to get for my kid. But it's nothing like you have to pull the rest along. You can't leave nobody behind in this struggle.
Well, I started us out with We Are the Change. Brother Fahim is going to help lead us in the solutions to these impacted problems.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, in the interest of time, any football fans in here? You get down to the fourth quarter, and they give you a 2-minute warning. I'm timing. We're interested in hearing what everybody got to say, but we need you to articulate it in a 2-minute time frame with your wisdom, with your experience, with your intuition, and with your heart. All right, and so I only got the last 2 questions because of the interest of time. So I'm just gonna go right into it. What recommendations do you have to improve how education functions in your community? Who wants to tackle? Ready?
Okay. Yeah, I was like, prepared. I was prepared on the list. And I kind of answered the first question with the second, but okay. One of the things I think I've noticed with folks is like, especially Black folks, we take on some of the ideas of our oppressors. And so some of like the Black aesthetic, we kind of like, oh, don't do this, don't do that. And sometimes I think we need to realize that we're saying, hey, we're navigating white supremacy to our kids instead of saying that something is, implicitly wrong. Another thing that I'm doing is teaching our kids not to blindly submit and think for themselves. I think that's another thing we do sometimes, like, because I said so, but we could do better with saying, hey, this way. Like teaching our kids to ask questions and answering their questions. And free thinking. Something I'm doing in Birmingham is direct pushback. So one thing that this system does to us is strips us of our agency, especially as parents, Black women. We do direct pushback to that. When you need something and you're Black in Birmingham, we're pulling up. We're going to give it to you. If it's cash, here you go. If it's gas, here you are. We're mobilizing resources, and we're realizing that, we're not all working with the same 24 hours. People like to think, oh, well, you have the same amount of time, but I don't have the same amount of time if I have 3 kids. I'm a single parent. I don't have the same time if I'm disabled, queer, trans, I can go on. Direct aid. You can't do this work without direct aid. It doesn't matter how much work you try to get done. People need resource. We don't need saviors to find. We need resource. We need money and resources. Black women can save themselves. Harm reduction. We're doing this work in a way that acknowledges trauma that Black women are facing, Black people are facing. And all skin folk is not kin folk. In Birmingham, we got this pretty Black mayor. This
use black and brown bodies as capital just as our oppressors have. And I think sometimes people are just like, oh, he cute, you know, he look like us. No, that ain't us. Hey,
No justice,
no peace.
Thank you. Oh, who got next?
2 minutes.
Yeah, you are the 2 minutes. Great job.
I'm a pragmatist. I'm always trying to find a solution. And the truth of the matter is, it is community schools. If you live in a city where the one dentist that takes your Medicaid card should be put in jail for the work that he does. The fact that you have to stand in a line, y'all know who I'm talking about if you're from Camden. You have to stand in a line outside to wait your turn and for this dentist who is like a butcher, okay? But if we had community schools and then 1 or 2 or 3 of these schools had a dentist that the children could see for preventive care, because when you don't have health care, this is gonna be me now, okay? My mother had 8 children. She worked very hard, so did my father, but they didn't have dental care. I used to have to go to his father. He was a better dentist than this gentleman. But we still couldn't go for that tooth cleaning, those x-rays or anything like that. It was only for extractions. Thank God they were in the back, not in the front. Okay, that's all I have to say about that. But we need our schools to provide. We live in food deserts. There are no grocery stores in the majority of Camden, New Jersey, period. The liquor store, like the gentleman said, is the grocery store. So these are the things that I would like to see to improve education. How are they created? A child in pain can't learn. A hungry child can't learn. So if we can fix these, give our students the same opportunities for health care and for food, and I know that we will do better. So yes, community schools for me is the answer.
Wow.
I'm gonna take one more. How much time? You got a few minutes, but you got a bunch of minutes.
Good evening again. So what can we do?
Yes.
Myself personally, I have developed a curriculum with teaching our Black children entrepreneur skills, teaching our Black children how to think, how to become business leaders, with the idea that at the end is a 16-week program, and at the ending of the 16-week, the children will have a business. It includes creating your business plan from day 1. Your homework assignment is to go home and decide, see yourself in a business and what kind of business you want, and we will give you all the skills to go there, to take you there.
Okay, who got next? Jordan.
I just had something really quick to say about recommendations on how to improve education functioning in your community. I think the biggest thing is community empowerment. So like if the community doesn't have awareness of like the things that are going on or what we need to change, then change won't happen. So I think that's like the biggest thing. Giving people a voice, letting them realize that like this is what we need to fight for, and walking in that walk with them is the most important thing. And I think also getting the youth involved. So like we're talking about how youth has the most powerful voice, they're the ones that are being affected by these things that are going on. So we need to like pull our young people up, let them know that like this is important and these are the things we need to do for change.
Thank you. Who got next?
Sure. I think we need to get back to rites of passage programs. That's me. I grew up in a community where when we had young people that would be in trouble, we had is bongos. And that's where you take the young people, you put them in front of the community, and you tell them what's good about themselves. And we had men teaching young men, we had women teaching young women. This was our rites of passage program. And we started them out like first grade all the way to 12th grade. But in that, our kids learned how to write, they learned how, they had social skills, they had mentoring skills. So this is what we do in the community that I had, and I don't see that anymore. But we have rites of passage for our young people. And go and tell them every day, give them easy bongos and tell them how important they are. But it starts in the community, and they say this, the ruin of a nation starts in the homes of its people. If the community, if the homes are not connected, then the community is not gonna be connected. And that doesn't mean just because he lives with me or she lives across the street, we all are connected. And we all are responsible for our children. So we're talking about the schools feeding the kids. Next door should be able to feed the children. The next door should be able to get shoes. The mutual aid of the community. And that's what I said, the rights of the passage of the children being passed around everyone in the community. So every need is met. And it just doesn't depend on who goes to their school building, but it's when he's outside of that community, when he's outside of that school building, he still has community. So that's the rights of passage when we pass him around and we give him the right of love. So it starts with the community and then it goes on into the school.
Thank you, great input. Okay, who we got? We'll take two more, one here.
I think that, in our community, they need to open back the schools that they have shut down in Chicago. 50 schools. And if they open the school to put the resources back in there and sustainable community schools, then we can solve some of our problems with our children. Because a lot of the parents do not know, because our people's perish for the lack of knowledge. When we know better, we will do better. So we can't blame a lot of things on the parents, because some of the parents don't even know how to read themselves. So if we put the resources back in our schools, we can build our village back, because it takes a village just to raise one child. So that's what we need, our resources and our schools open back up in Chicago.
We got over here.
Oh, they said, I feel like to improve that. What? What Greg said was, I feel like the government, like, should stop putting money to other things. Should stop putting money to other things and put money to us, education. Because one day, the government, the people that are doing the government and stuff now, we will be the next one to do it. So if they don't want us to mess up, so they should put more money in an education, so we can get a better education than they did, so we can do better, a better job.
We come to the last question, but that concludes it. Okay, the last one. What do you want the local and federal government to do to improve education in your community? Okay, let's get something we haven't heard before.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think that it would be important for them to actually take the time to listen, to come into the community and to have an interaction with people, particularly people who don't have the power or aren't donating to their campaigns, but to like do actual outreach and to get some of the voices that don't typically get heard.
Thank you. You're up next.
Recognize that we're their bosses.
Come on.
Nice and concise. Okay.
I have to say that we have to hold the government accountable for those very services. If you don't have a good supermarket in your neighborhood, you have to hold your city governments accountable. We put a lot on the schools, and community schools is just one model, but we cannot ask schools to do everything to heal the whole community, because it has always backfired. Because if something goes wrong, they blame in the schools. We have to make sure that we are redirecting those that have the power to make those changes in the community. If they control transportation, if they control what companies are coming into your community, we have to hold those elected people accountable for their part, okay? And hold the schools accountable for education, because schools have taken on so much. That's why we have the community schools, because we don't have the hospitals, and we don't have the supermarkets, and we don't have all those other resources that you're talking about. We cannot let elected people off the hook for their part and stop blaming the schools for everything. Even the pandemic, they blaming the schools.
the children have learning loss. Really? The children don't eat because they don't have a good quality food in their communities. Okay? So we have to hold elected officials, even myself as a school board member, hold me accountable, hold me to the fire so that I am more than a skin folk. I am truly kinfolk, okay? Hold me accountable and we have to put our own people that already think like us in office, okay? These white folk ain't gonna change. All right? They're going to keep doing what they're doing. They already showed us. So stop marching and stop begging them to do the right thing. You got to get your name on the ballot, okay? You, over there, get your name on the ballot. Children, over there, get your name on the ballot. That's the only way things are going to change.
Okay, thank you.
If I went over, I apologize.
No, you're good.
I think the local and federal government just need to turn over the resource in general, the money, every amount of resources they have. They don't need to manage us. We approve them for the last 4 fucking years. We don't need them. They don't have our interests at heart. We need to remember they don't have our interests at heart. They never have. It's working how it's designed to. And so I do think community schools are the way to go. And I think their responsibility is just to turn over resources and money.
Last one. End it off with you.
Yeah, I'm on a similar type time as the sister that just been speaking. I feel like not much the government can do for us. They doing what they were designed to do, what they want to do. I think not to be funny, but maybe like resign or make records public. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like saying if we had, basically, if we have access and we know, like something that we talked about. Strong mayor, strong council, knowing who pays the mayor, knowing who pays these people, knowing who employs them, who kind of pulls their strings, and maybe we can get to those people. But I mean, other than that, I don't really think. I think the question or something to think about is what can what are the things that we can recreate, or what are the things that we can go take that the government isn't doing, or that the government is slacking on. You feel me? Like what are the areas that we can kind of pinpoint and utilize? But we got to move away from what can the government do better? You feel me? Because I think you want to move away from the government. You want to move away from America and all this other stuff. What the use is, what I'm saying?
So we heard a lot of practical, viable solutions here, and so that takes us right into our next step, the federal funding. The next steps, Sister Sharon. So ready to take the mic. Thank you all for your input. We appreciate it.
Okay, let's give each other an applause. We did a great job. It's been a long day. Early. Let's stand up. I just want to do a little exercise, get us back into finding about this money.
Getting back into this money.
Okay. I'm sorry. All right.
You're looking good.
Okay.
You're looking good.
Thank you. No. So we're just gonna breathe, right? Because today's been a tough day. We heard a whole lot of talk about money, right? We heard it from NEA, AFT, Jamal Bowman, G2, Zakia. We know that it's a lot of money out there, but we're going to talk about that. But first, I'm thinking we need to breathe, right? So what we're going to do, you can stand in your length, get grounded, breathe. When I say breathe in, you breathe in from your stomach, breathe in, and then when you breathe out, make a loud sound, like a lion almost, right? All right? So we're going to say breathe in, release, breathe out. Right. Okay, we're going to do that one more time. Breathe in, breathe out. One more and last time. Breathe in and breathe out. Yes, thank you. Have a seat.
billions of dollars that are going to each district, not nationwide, but billions of dollars that are going to each state. And sometimes even local cities are getting billions of dollars. This money in some states have not been spent at all. But we're trying to build community schools. So I just wanted to give a little example of how to find this money, and where you can look for the money, and then you can find out in your state or local district how much money has been spent or have not been spent. So,
You go to Birmingham and there.
let's try Mississippi.
Oh, God. Maybe they worse than Alabama. That's our only chance. Alabama usually be the worst. But we like, wait, what about Mississippi?
49 and 50.
Yeah.
Always be. And then North Carolina. Infant mortality, 49, 50. Y'all are above North Carolina. They've been looking at what people are doing in Alabama.
They should not.
That's what they would do.
So the site seems to be off, but has anybody done a training with us before? We did a training, raise your hand if you did the training around the federal funding with us. Okay. Ms. Paulette, you actually used it before, haven't you? And can you just share like what you used it for?
Well, I was assigned to the ESSER committee for our schools, and we received $100 million, and we wanted to see where the finances were going to be going to. So the end result is that, that information helped. I looked at it, but the other individuals didn't look at it as much. But what we ended up finding, what I found out is that the money that we that we're going to be getting, they haven't submitted it as of yet. And the sad part about it, being on that ESSER fund, I was there as a representative of the special education, and getting them to want to use money for special education like home teeth. They found every need for everything else. They want to do professional development. They want to do resources for police in the school. I said, yeah, is you crazy? You already got money. You're not going to use our money for that. And then the sad part is that $32 million of that money is going to go for the deficit that our district is having. So that only leaves us with $68 million to do what's necessary. And that's still a debate that's taking place. So and they still have money that they have from the two other finances that came in from the ARP money. So they utilize it, they haven't utilized it all the way through. So knowing this and knowing that they had these listening sessions, so you're supposed to have a listening session with your community. And I know a lot of states may have not had that. But we had an opportunity to have that in our district with our central office. It wasn't with the board members, it was the central office. And then at that meeting, after the community came in and gave their input and so on and so forth, they ended up sharing that the central office said, well, thank you for sharing that information, but we're going to make this decision a different way. We're like, oh, no, you're not. That money belongs to us. That money is our money, and this is what we want to have happen. Along with that, we just got some new school board members in, so we got to convince them to actually sign over and represent what we've done, because our school board members are elected. We fought to get you in there, and some of them we don't like, because we have one who is actually a charter school board member who left that to become one of our board members on our district. So that whole situation is getting to understand the necessity of this money and how it's best going to serve our district and our students who are needed. Because for the longer time, just like you were saying, how we're impacted because, like I said, the voices of our people are not heard because they're in that state of flight or fight. And the whole process of them having to deal with what they got to deal with actually brings anxiety, and they don't want to know. They want you to say, you go do it, make it happen for us. But the end result of that, we try to make sure they understand your voice is the voice that needs to be heard, because you are going to receive the services, and your next generation is your children. So if you don't have the understanding to do what's necessary, then we're going to lose out in the end.
Thanks, Ms. Paulette. Does anybody know?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, leaders for
Oh, yes.
Bye, family.
Bye-bye.
Nice meeting you. Go Patterson. Hi, Pittsburgh.
Mark is leaving too, I'm sorry, I just wanna make sure folks say bye to our families leaving.
Well.
So travel safe, family. By a show of hands, as we are saying goodbye, we can do simultaneous work, because I know the folks will be leaving soon as well. How many folks knew that they got federal dollars over the last year? Billions of federal dollars.
For the schools?
Yes, right, public education. Okay. So the fact that there are some that don't know that is the problem. Like I said, it's been a year. And so schools got up almost $200 billion K-12 education over the last year. $200 billion with the B. The first one is March of last year with the CARES Act. The second one is December with the ESSER funds. And then the last one in this last March with the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, right? Which tripled what we got initially. So almost $200 billion. And what you heard at the press conference was that it was earmarked for Title I students and students in the population of young people that we work with are trying to change, have impact on them over and over again. So a specific population of young people, right? Anybody in here trying to fund something as it pertains to K-12 education? So the point of this website, the Education Stabilization Fund, write that down, because right now the site doesn't seem to be working, but it's really important. It's easy to maneuver and manipulate. Education Stabilization Fund. And you get a little map. It'll have your state up there. You click on your state. We're going to send a link. You click on your state, and you'll see how much you got from each pot of those dollars I just shared, as well as higher education, as well as early education. Like, it will have all the things, but we're just talking about K-12. And so you can go there and you can see how much money, not only did you receive, but how much money in each pot of those dollars your state has spent. Sharon can share. She shared it with me. I didn't know this. Well, in New York State, we got $13 billion with the B. New York City got $7 billion out of those $13 billion, right? And so it was really important for us to create a survey, to ask parents, how they want these dollars spent, to follow the plan, to look at the plan your state submitted. Many of them were vague in the beginning, understandably to a certain extent, because it was a lot of money that they were not expecting in a short period of time to figure out how they were going to spend it. The plus to this is that it's not etched in stone. It is something that should be reviewed every 6 months. So you should know what's in that plan, and that you are advocating, like Ms. Paulette did, to ensure that, maybe they put in that something should happen, police and schools. But in 6 months, we should be saying, it didn't work, it's not going to work, we told you it wasn't going to work, and so we need to reconfigure this plan of education. The dollars are up to 2000, could be probably spent up to 2024 to 2025, depending on how it's configured, right? It's not long-term money, it's not permanent money. But what we had at the press conference is in addition to these dollars, which is why I said accountability matters. Because if we already got $200 billion, and many of our states have not used it, or they use it in ways, like Ms. Paulette said, to put whatever it wasn't around special education, then we have to make sure that the monies get to where they need to go to. And the Build Back Better is going to bring more money into our schools. Right? Child care, $18 billion for pre-K. Who needs pre-K? Starting at 3 years old. Who could use full day quality pre-K in your state? $18 billion. Right? So this is going to actually impact. The reality is, though, we know, is that many of our states do not have the infrastructure to push out these dollars, much less an equitable infrastructure. Right? So if they don't have that, and we're getting all these dollars flowing in, what does it look like? And I honestly don't know what that looks like. But what does it look like to create an infrastructure that allows these dollars to go out quickly instead of sitting in somebody's bank?
Right.
I was just looking around the room. If I can be candid, I don't know if y'all hear what this is saying.
I hear what you're saying. I tried to spend
there is no infrastructure to guide and regulate the flow of these resources. So that can either mean widespread corruption
Yes.
or for the organizer, opportunity. You create the infrastructure. So what you all are doing right now, I say this all the time because I listen to our folk when they talk about how they run their campaigns. And a lot of our folk are very humble, so they're not going to toot their own horn. But the reason why there are 400 community, or going on 400 community schools in New York, is because the Alliance for Quality Education created a process when there was no process, where the mayoral candidates had to follow the community meetings that they held in New York. Y'all stop me when I start lying. They had to follow the community meetings that they did in New York. They created this blue bus. They took this blue hoopty bus around the city, and the people began to build that bus out with a vision for what public education was going to be in New York. Then those decision makers had no choice but to respond. They created a process. Any victory we talk about where we have transformed how an institution functions, the formula is simple. It ain't complicated. So all I'm saying is there is no infrastructure. So all this listening project stuff we're talking about is about in your cities create the infrastructure.
Yeah.
People will fight for what they help to build. It's not that people don't want to be involved. Nobody talks to our people with any real respect. You don't nobody go to Ms. Jones, who got a high school diploma or some high school, and talk to her like she got some wisdom. Let's be real. Nobody talks to our people like that. So since nobody talks to our people, for the most part, our people are not invested in a process that has never represented them. We are different, or we supposed to be. So excuse me, since I'm just getting inspired by what y'all are saying, I want to make sure that we're hearing it. There is no process. Now, for the change maker, all that means is this opportunity. And so, I just want to
Is there a question?
Are there dollars that are actually going directly to these departments of education? And I think I shared before with you, Sister Z, that like in the Little Rock School District, our CFO is telling us that this is money in the making, that they spend the money first and then there's a reimbursement. Can you speak to that?
No.
So it was, the reason these dollars were pushed out so quickly because the pandemic and people knew that there was great need. And like I shared at the press conference, like it took a pandemic for folks to see. Like there wasn't a TV station, there wasn't a radio show, there wasn't a commercial, I don't know about you, especially in New York, that didn't talk about over the months of the pandemic around schools. Whether it's air filtration, nurses not being there, like all the things. So the money was put there to be flushed into the system immediately. It wasn't no, we got to put out to whatever. I'm not saying those things have not happened where they've had to like, in the federal government, this was not that money. This money was actually supposed to have direct impact. And so again, while this is money that's not long, it is absolutely opportunity, right? And what people will say is that we don't want to hire more teachers because in 3 years we'll have to fill that cliff. But the money is for what children need in this moment right now over the next few years. And if children and students and others need more teachers, more social workers, more of the things, then that's what they need in this moment, right? And then the goal is, if it was a just system, is that we're gonna figure out how we continue to make this happen, especially as we are assessing whether or not the direction we took was one that is impacting young people, Title I students, those most marginalized, special education, English language learners, immigrant students, right? That's what a just system looks like. So again, the website don't lie, the federal government created it, right? So point to that. Go there and see. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why this federal government is telling us that you only spent 50% of the dollars and there's another 50% left when we know that children don't have X, Y, Z, or the other thing, right? Show me why I see the third installment of these ARPA dollars, we got this much, and we haven't spent any of it yet, right? Because that's what you have to bring to people. I also want to say, this is not going to be easy. Nope. I said $200 billion. I don't know how many of our communities have experienced that influx of money.
right, ever. You know, and so what does it look like if this doesn't happen right? We heard what people said. They will blame our children, they will blame our schools, and they will take no responsibility for the lack of accountability and urgency for actually getting these dollars out, right? And so we say not on our watch, right? We don't sound this alarm. So again, I want you to push you back to utilize this website. You have people in your district. You might be connected to your unions. Your unions know all about this. Get together, powwow with them. Like, what are we going to do to have an infrastructure that's going to support getting these dollars out, knowing that more money is coming in, right? You might have great relationships with in colleges or universities with folks who do numbers. What kind of infrastructure can we have? Do an instant, quick. Let's have these conversations, brainstorming, listening projects around what is it going to take to build something that's going to get these pre-K dollars to our communities. And many of them, I know in Mississippi, some don't even have a zip code. So what does that look like when that money's coming to me if I don't even have a zip code and I'm not acknowledged? Right? So there's opportunity here. There's a level of urgency in this moment right now. And once again, I think the theme has been always throughout the last day and a half, which is like we, collective, we got to do this together. And we don't have to do this by ourselves, right? Which is why J4J has been having these trainings, etc. But please utilize this, because the reality is anybody who's experiencing, and then I see you. Anybody who's, I'm sorry. That's okay, thank you. Anybody who's experiencing this thing around critical race theory, these attacks on that, this is connected to dollars. Because if you wanted to use your federal dollars to create equitable any conversation, you wanted to buy books that were centered in racial justice or climate justice or anything that talked about LGBTQ young people, if you wanted to bring in people to do trainings or any of those things, they're attacking using those dollars on anything. Through legislation, through firing of educators, throwing out books. Like, this is not separate, it is the same thing. And that's what we have to understand. They are all built upon themselves to once again create a system that is deeply inequitable and that literally make America great the way it was again. So I see a question here, and I'm going to pass it back to you.
We're going to have to end this piece, but I'm going to give you one.
Well, again, being the pragmatist. So I went to the ESSER NEA workshop, trying to bring it back to my district, and people really thought I had lost my mind. I had all the little binders with the cute little ribbons and all this stuff that they told me to build this community so we can have this conversation, but let's just table that. So right now, with this money's coming in, I think it would be beneficial if we had someone who was having grassroots community meetings. Let's say, let's go to the churches and see what they need in order to start the pre-K and pre-K4 in their buildings. Because we don't have the infrastructure, but there are buildings there that are part of the infrastructure. And I'm telling you, people don't have no idea as to where this is, how this is, and how to access it. So if we could spend maybe some time, you know, having not just workshops. You have a building and you want to do a pre-K3. This is what you need. These are the regs you need to follow. These are the things that you have to have in place. And then we can, I don't know, can you pre-fund, or do you just have to wait till the money's break and hope that you get the building? Because I had a little church, not mine, but they had pre-K, because New Jersey's been very forward with that. We had pre-K4 before most people did. But then when the charter school opened up in the neighborhood, the district didn't give them another extension on their school in the next year. So then they were stuck with personnel and modifications to their building that they can't even use anymore because the charter school took the pre-K4. So there's a lot in that, I know, but there's a lot. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to say, I'm going to give you 1 minute because we are about to end on this. But we've been having these conversations along with the listening project, and we're open to having more training around the ARPA money so that you can be very much aware of the website and how to navigate through the website. So what you will receive from us is a link, right? A link to the website, and then I'll attach a form. If there's questions around the ARPA money, we can sort of answer you that way, or have some type of workshop that will help you organize and get those funds, okay? This is the last question.
Thank you, Ms. Yager.
For those who don't know me, I'm Maria Harmon with Step Up Louisiana, based in Baton Rouge and New Orleans and Jefferson Parish. We reviewed the information on the Education Stabilization Fund website. There's no plan that has been submitted from the state of Louisiana and how they plan to use those funds, those billions of dollars. There's supposed to be a plan that's submitted for everyone to view when they click on Louisiana website or any state for that matter. You're supposed to see the plan that the state intends to use and how they will spend the funding. My question is, first off, what can we do on a grassroots end to ensure that we apply pressure to the state, decision makers to submit a plan? And also, if they do plan on spending that money without a plan submitted, is there a way for them to be penalized in any way from the federal government? That was just my question.
If you don't spend the
Okay, I don't know if you all realize it, but it's a time limit on this money, and the way you all talking about plan and everything, the other side got the plan. You need to get busy right now. It's about 3 years. That money has to be used, okay?
Michelle.
Yeah, so real quick, around what you shared, Maria, the key is like to bring the community together. So what we did in order to hold the state accountable for what it was, like I said, we held meetings real quick, like we put it together real quick. We had 4, and we had virtual meetings, one with young people, one monolingual Spanish speakers, one with caregivers and parents, and they weren't just in New York City, they were all across the state. And the goal was then to come up with the ideas to then go to state education department, like this is what parents are saying, put it in a report. We went to the state education department, then we had a larger meeting where we shared with more folks about the issue in the plan. And so then more folks were able to like host state education department. We're fortunate we have folks in office now, our chancellor and our commissioner who have been allies for a long time since they were principals, et cetera. So we have a decent relationship with them to be able to do that. The reality is that it really is gonna take constant ongoing pressure, but if you tell somebody, young people or anybody else, that you got $1 billion, what's the next question you're gonna ask?
What you gonna do
Where's
with
the
it?
money? How do I get it? So if folks don't know, then they can't even be excited about pushing for the difference, right? So how do we make sure, even if there's 10 people excited about it, that they're gonna get this money, how do they then branch out and tell 10 more people, right? Because the onus is not just on the organization, it is on the collective community, but if they don't know, then they can't advocate for it. And to Mama Moore's point, yes, there is a time limit, but you know what? The reality is there is a way to put things in place that these monies can still go to long after the 3 years. But if you have to have the plan, to Mama Moore's point, in place, if you want social responsible education, it doesn't necessarily have to end in 2025 when these dollars in. It's an ongoing thing that continues to happen and keeps giving and keeps giving. I think the thing that we have to make sure is that people know that it's out there, and the advocacy. And I'm not the only, California's done a really great job in fighting for these dollars and where they're gonna go. There's a lot of other folks out there, so I think that we need to just figure out how do we come together to be able to answer these questions. And it's a level of urgency because if they spent the money and you don't know, that means they probably spent it on something you didn't want to.
Wow.
So, and if they haven't spent the money, then it's even deeper opportunity right now to really engage and organize in a way that is connected to the work that you are already doing. It doesn't have to be separate. It should be exactly what you've been fighting for to get funded. That's what you should be fighting to make sure it's money because it's there now.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna pivot from this conversation. I know it's an important conversation, but we're gonna pivot, because we only have a certain amount of time left. As G2 said, Rasha made the cake. He put the icing on it. I'm just gonna put the sprinkles on it. So the next steps, what are we doing next? What comes up next is in April, we're going to have our national town hall, right? Yes. National town halls in each region. And then those town halls would be to quantify the quality of life agenda for those regions. Then from there, in September, May, we're going to have a convening where all throughout the United States, all of J4J will come together and qualify that quality of life agenda that we're going to present in September of 2022, when we take over Black Lives Matter Plaza here in Washington, D.C., with thousands and thousands of people to announce our quality of life agenda. So those are the next steps, but immediately, we need you to begin to strategize around planning and organizing around that money, right? It's important. So that's all I have to say. I'm going to pass it back to you, Sister Roger.
Okay. All right, yes, you will. All right. All right, sis, all right. So, everybody,
Good.
feeling good?
Yes, yes.
All right, so repeat after me. We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our
Say
chains.
it like to me, we have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
Say it like to me, we have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
Listen, family, this has been amazing, amazing day that we spent together, just being in fellowship, being in community with each other, being in village time with each other. We've learned a lot. There's a lot of exchanging. I want you to be good to yourself and stay safe in this space because you all have expressed harm. You all also have expressed solutions to this time. So be a healer to yourself and make sure that you are housing good things in the spirit to take back with you because now you got to go back, right? Now you got to go back and face the beast. Because you've been in this kind of like a lair where all the lions talking about how we can fight this, right, Brother G2? Now you got to go back and go fight this beast. So please know that we are building this campaign. Our next steps immediately, as my sister already said, if you have those laid out, go to the website standingforequity.org. Want everybody to visit that website. It has everything that you can possibly need to do your own listening project in your city. It has all the pieces, all the toolkit information is on this website. Everything is there. It's a really easy process. And then all the next steps we were discussing is on this website. This website is the way we communicate with everyone and how we register our listening process and upcoming things that's going on for the campaign. We have a campaign call that's every 2 weeks. So our next campaign call will be next week. We'll send you all this information out by email. And we come together as a collective of the campaign to discuss what's happening in our cities, but to also go into regional breakout rooms to discuss what's happening regionally and build this policy of life agenda. So we have some work to do. We're not leaving you here with nothing, no assignment to get done. There's assignments to be done. So be a part of the campaign, check in with us, and then we'll continue to mobilize to get together for April, get together for May, and get together for September. We got some work to do, all right? Think about who's on that bus. How many buses are you getting to DC? We got to fill up Black Lives Matter class. We got to fill it up. Not just because we just want to, because it has to be done. So we thank every good for yes. No, yes.
We got time.
We got time. You got it? Go ahead. Yeah, that's up for you.
I just want to share, I hear Maria's question. And I know that could be like, how do we stop them from stealing that money, and what do we do? How do we galvanize the public? It's a huge question. So I just wanted to share with you all, if I could, like a short story, right? One of the things we did, Chicago did not have an elected school. Boston was the first city in the United States to have mayoral control. Chicago was second. Mayoral control is, of course, a tool to snatch democracy away from cities where they want to change the urban landscape. So we've been fighting like wet cats for an elected school. We have a weak mayor right now. And do not believe, and I'm glad I'm being recorded, she ain't progressive. So don't believe all that blah blah. So when she ran for mayor, she said she supported an elected school. She said she was against school closing. But of course, when she got in office, she flipped. So we started chasing her down the street. She got so weak that she formed the negotiations committee. Now, you know, a mayor that forms a negotiations committee is a mayor that's not in a powerful position. I'm on the negotiations committee. I see the setup. I'm not going to go into everything about how we got set up, because I'll call out some people that I don't need to call out. But what I will tell you is this. When we were doing town hall meetings on why we need to have an elected school board, one of the things that people started calling for was a moratorium on school closings. So elected officials, state elected officials, responded to this groundswell of people saying stop closing schools in black neighborhoods. And so they moved because it would have been politically, it wasn't just one group saying this, now it's people all over the city saying it. So now it became an issue in which they were threatened if they don't do what we say. Does that make sense? Yeah. If I'm being clear? So I think if the concern is how do we do this, we start engaging. It's good that they haven't spent the money. It's good they don't have a plan. We have to be the visionaries, and we have to build the plan by creating grassroots demand for something different. And so what we ended up accomplishing is now we have a 6-year moratorium on school closings, which creates the space for us to re-envision public education in Chicago. So now we're doing these listening sessions all over the city with different community groups around sustainable community schools, because we want to build up the demand, not just Cocoa, but all these, whether you're uptown, whether you're in Inglewood, wherever you're at, parents realizing that there is a, communities realizing, young people realizing that there is a solution where it ain't just about wraparound support, but it's saying every aspect of the educational experience must be guided by the wisdom of every aspect of the school community. Young people should be in the discussions around curriculum. Okay. Parents should be in the discussions around teacher supports. Community members should be in discussions about what wraparound supports look like. Parents and students should be leading conversations around what does a student-centered school climate look like. You feel me? Parents, parents have more to do in school than just chaperone field trips. Amen. What does transformative parent and community engagement look like? We must be the visionaries, and we have to have belief that if we engage people at a very raw level, that they will activate. And what you are hearing from everybody is story after story after story on why that is the truth, right? So this moment is not something you're making up. It's like once in a lifetime type. There's never been, like, since what was the president's name of when he was in the wheelchair? What's his name? Roosevelt. There has not been investment in American infrastructure like this since Roosevelt, right? So that example of the fact that we won that moratorium on school closings because we built the type of public engagement that made it impossible for Black elected officials to do anything other than what we said, right? So that was it.
All right, brother. You said, all right, yes, sir, okay. All right, ma'am, so we had access, we've had time, we've been together, we've done all the things that we could do in this short amount of time we had, but most importantly, we're grateful. Grateful to all of you for just taking a moment to respond to the need of today, the need of this time. You all came from all over this country. I don't take that, nor does the Jordan for Justice family take that lightly, that you are responding to the call. Because you came out, that means that we can do it for more people, we can inspire people to come out and be a part of this time. So we want to close everyone out with love and peace. I know some folks have to get back to their trains today, and some folks will be done tomorrow, but we're not done. We're going to have some time to talk to groups individually. To myself, Sharon, and Ramon, we're talking to you all that we're still standing behind to kind of catch up on some of the things we need to organize. We know you need time to talk about the things that are going on right in the city. That's urgent right now, right? So, any questions? Yes.
So we're, the Build Back Better Fund is currently in the Senate and needs to be approved by the Senate. What, if anything, or actions are we taking to try to move that? We're not taking it as a fait accompli. So what are we doing to help support that? Because without that, there's no money.
I'll pass the G to let them answer because we haven't talked about it.
Yeah, there'll be additional through the Alliance to Reclaim Our Schools. We'll have days of action where we'll be making phone calls, flooding city offices, calls and emails. That's one thing we'll be doing. When the Senate opens back up, we're going to bring another advocacy team down to go meet with senators. So those are two of the things that we know we're going to do out the gate. Okay. I will say, the Build Back Better Fund, you're getting some pushback from, but remember earlier we talked about why Republicans were not fighting the American Rescue Act. So by the same token, Build Back Better Fund, I think that there's a real possibility because of the people who will benefit from it. That's right.
Yep.
That we can get a lot of those things.
And they have a midterm election.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Give yourself a big round of applause. Thank y'all. A big project. You've done it. Let's do more in your cities. We're here to support. Thank you all. Be in peace and love. Thanks everybody who viewed us today. We appreciate you being on Facebook Live with us, and we'll continue to push forward. Equity or else. Thank you.
All right.
All right.